My creative journey started in 2012 when I decided to take that step into further education, studying at college the subject of visual communications, which taught me everything from animation to web design to logo design, typography, photography, as well as several other things like illustration as well. So it was quite a broad subject and it gave me a good amount of fundamentals in terms of what is expected of me as a designer. Now, with this as well, I went straight from high school. A lot of the other people in my college class had already done college previously. They had an understanding of what design is. I went in fresh faced. I had no idea what Photoshop was. I had no idea what Illustrator was. InDesign, when Adobe Dreamweaver was out, we web designers, we remember. We remember Dreamweaver. I say we remember. We don't want to remember Dreamweaver, but we remember it. Same with Adobe Flash as well. I had no idea about any of these pieces of software. I was so new to the whole concept of design, but this was where it started. And at the same time, I was working in a small takeout place. I was earning, I think it was roughly £5 an hour. I think it was just over £5 an hour. Or to do some conversion, I think it's about $6.50 an hour that I was earning. I graduated college 2 years later with a higher national diploma in visual communications, and not really knowing my next step, what my sort of next goal was, what the plan was after this. I worked in the hospitality industry for the next year and maybe a month, give or take. I worked in a place called Nando's. If you're from the UK, you know exactly what Nando's is. It's a great restaurant. You get treated really well there, and the staff and the food are pretty fantastic. After a year of working there, and through sheer dumb luck, I landed a role as a junior graphic designer at a agency called Alliance Creative. And the interesting thing about Alliance Creative is that every single one of their designers are also freelancers that have all come together to form this company. They can go off and work on freelance projects as well as working on in-house agency projects. And this was a really interesting insight for me into not only the freelancing space, but also the agency space as well, because it allowed me to see the type of skill and the talent that is needed to both work as a professional in the industry, freelancing wise, but then also what's expected of you as an in-house designer. And a lot of what I did was some identity design, a lot of document design, because we worked very closely with a business in the financial services industry. And when the tax year end started to creep in, I was the designer who worked on, I think it was over 400 documents. It was a lot. When I saw the spreadsheet of all the documents I had to edit, it was a lot. I got very, very good with InDesign and InDesign today, even though I focus mostly on visual identity systems. InDesign is by far the software that I'm most familiar with, and I know probably some of the most advanced techniques with it, which sometimes I surprise myself with. I think as designers, we surprise ourselves with the knowledge that we have and the techniques that we're able to use in terms of the software that we know every day and we use every day. My contract there as a junior designer was extended twice, initially from 3 months to 6, and then from 6 to 7 months. And then afterwards, there wasn't really any work for me, so the contract ended there. And then from that, I was able to fast forward roughly 3 months, and then I'm working as a marketing analyst, and then move into web development as well as a junior web designer, which that was really interesting as well, seeing a lot of the front end and the back end programming side of things. I was able to learn a fair amount of HTML. I've not really touched it since because frankly it does terrify me slightly, so that's something I'm going to have on the back burner, I think, for a little while. From there, however, in having these kind of 3 different job roles in the same space I want to build a career in, I felt that was probably one of the most valuable professional points in my career. But I think it was also a point in my life where I didn't have a full understanding of what my role was meant to be, like everything that I was meant to do, how proactive I was meant to be within said role, as well as learning opportunities as well. I did have some excellent one-to-ones with the directors of the creative agency that I was at as a junior designer, and that was incredible. It was great getting literal decades of experience. Some of the directors have, worked with the Adobe Creative Suite since its conception, which is incredible, specifically in design as well, which I think is why I'm so proficient in it now. And honestly, I think watching some of these guys just work was an absolute privilege, because, for example, one of the directors sat down, opened his laptop, he didn't even look at his keyboard. Like, I constantly have to look at my keyboard for shortcuts, or I need some form of cheat sheet to figure out exactly where all my shortcuts are. Is it Shift V? Is it Control V? Is it Control F? Shift F? Is it a function button? No, this guy was just sitting there staring at his screen, creating this incredible cover for a document, and didn't look down once, didn't look at the keyboard once. That is the level that I aspire to be at, where I don't need a cheat sheet, I don't even need to look at the keyboard. I just sit down and I know exactly what I'm doing. After that contract ended, I felt a little bit lost. It's like, well, what's my next step? Do I go back to try and get a job in-house at an agency? Do I go freelance? Do I try night classes? Do I go to full-time education, part-time education, online? It did feel overwhelming at the time. For the next 2 years, I worked in a bar on and off, and through that, I learned some really, really great people skills in terms of dealing with like different customer queries mostly, and also how to make a good margarita, because frankly, those are hard to come by. As simple as a drink it is, to make a really good margarita takes a little bit of skill, which I'm very proud to say I have learned that skill. During that time as well, I decided to go back to further education to begin a degree in digital media. And this was in September of 2019. Can you see where this is going? Roughly a few weeks into studying my digital media degree, all students in the creative industries received an email about a program called Bridge to Business, which was giving an opportunity to 6 students, 3 from the west of Scotland, 3 from the kind of east and the central belt of Scotland, giving them the opportunity to go on an entrepreneurship to Holland for 3 weeks. And at the time, I didn't really think anything of it. I thought, I've got college on. I asked several of my peers as well and the other college students that were in different classes, and nobody was applying to it. So I think it was about 2 days before the deadline, I thought, you know what? I'll apply. What is the worst that happens? They say no, and I move on with my life and I can continue my studies. The 3 weeks that I spent in Holland really changed my perspective on a lot of things. It taught me that I can come up with the idea for a business. I can create an incredibly successful business just from an idea, a little bit of planning, and getting some support from the right places, which Bridge to Business was, fully capable of giving you the right resources, bringing you into their network as well, which I find to be incredible. In the time that I spent there, honestly, did change my life, and it did change a lot about how I think about entrepreneurialism and the entrepreneur mindset. That does sound a bit kind of rise and grindy. Trust me, I know how it sounds. It does sound rise and grindy, but learning about the entrepreneurial mindset, learning about how to build a business, what kind of business, the market that you're going to reach, the target audience, the product that you want to produce, all incredibly, incredibly important things, as well as the services that you want to provide. And for me, I was thinking, I want to run a design studio. I want to create and run a design studio. And I want to have incredible projects that we work on. I'd really love to work in the animation and VFX space. I know it's mostly visual identity systems that I work on now, but that's something that I really want to do in the near future. And those are skills that I'm currently learning because, frankly, the amount of free resources that are out there, specifically YouTube, as well in terms of tutorials, it is phenomenal the amount of things that you can learn even just by spending half an hour doing a tutorial. At the end of the year and going into January of 2020, I hadn't quite come to the term with the fact that I was suffering from depression. And unfortunately, I had to withdraw from the digital media degree course. And I also had to leave my job at the bar for not really any, mental health reasons. It was mostly due to the unsociable hours they began to take their toll on me after the amount of time that I spent in the job. Since leaving those two things behind, I felt like I was caught amongst the colossal tidal wave of what do we do now that became very much a normality in the world. And from there, I spent the next several months in probably the saddest and loneliest time of my life. We did all have our Zoom meetings, our like pub quizzes, all of our, get-togethers and, nights out via Zooms and via Teams that kept me going. And I think it kept a lot of people going through the isolation that we were all generally feeling. Roughly 9 months after I got back from Holland in August of 2020, so when things began to die down a little bit in terms of the pandemic, I received a WhatsApp message from one of the mentors that also runs the Bridge to Business program that took us all to Holland on the entrepreneurship. And they knew that I was passionate about design, that I was a graphic designer, but not officially a freelancer. And they asked me to do a rebrand for Bridge to Business, for their logo design specifically. To put in a wee disclaimer, at that point, I had no idea what a rebrand was. I didn't know what a rebrand could entail, but I said yes anyway, because at that point I realized that from now on in, I'm going to take opportunities and I'm going to see where they take me. So this was one opportunity I had no idea about, but I had a slight idea. There was a little hunch about what this project could entail. So I said yes, and I've never went onto YouTube so quickly before and typed in how to do a rebrand ? And that was it. My search began to learn the skills on how to do a logo design and a logo rebrand. And that took me probably the next 4 or 5 weeks before I would actually be presenting to the people at Bridge to Business. The series I found is a series by the Futur. It is called Building a Brand. And to any visual identity designer, anybody that's interested in logo design, logo rebranding, identity systems in general, whether you're a design student, a professional in the industry, and you have not seen this series, please go and watch this series. It's called Building a Brand. It is on the Futur's YouTube channel. It is one of the most phenomenal series you will ever watch on designing a brand and doing a rebrand. It is genuinely fantastic. It taught me almost everything I know about visual identity design and rebranding. In the beginning stages of the Bridge to Business project, I did some initial research into what the logo design could look like. Am I looking to do, a complete rebrand, go in a completely different direction? Or am I looking for something that's a bit closer to what the original looks like and just make some updates? I sketched down what I thought would be, some good ideas, taking the Bridge to Business quite literal in terms of a couple of the bridge sketches that I did. And then I realized that they maybe need a little bit more of a subtler touch. Maybe just having the words in a line and then having like a symbol at the end, like with some really big brands out there. Taking the concepts to the digital stage, I realized I had unintentionally done the one concept method, which, if you don't know what the one concept method is, it is basically where you justify one single concept, one single logo design for your client. And what you do is you basically build a narrative around why this is the logo design that you have connected your client's vision to, and that is the one that you're going to bring forward to them. And I very unintentionally did this, mostly because at the end of the project, when I thought I'd found the logo design that was right, I then found the logo design that was bear that I had drawn previously in the sketchbook, and then I replaced that logo very, very quickly, and it worked even better than the previous iteration that I had done. The concept that I chose for Bridge to Business was something that I took both from a creative outlook but also a personal one. Because of the relationship that I had with the program, I looked to the experience that I had whilst in Holland, and during a trip to Rotterdam, we visited the Erasmus Bridge. If you do not know what Erasmus basically is the EU's program to support education, training, youth, and sport across Europe, and they support a bunch of different programs, and it also funds the Bridge to Business program. And I realised that this was going to be it. The bridge, the Erasmus Bridge, connects Bridge to Business. The Erasmus funds Bridge to Business. This was it. This was the concept. But I realised I didn't want to literally put the bridge in. So I broke it down into these triangular objects that look not so dissimilar to the original logo. And I had unintentionally created one of the best logo designs I've ever done to date, purely by accident, and realizing that I've not only done a rebrand, I've done a brand evolution from the original logo design and the assets, refining them and evolving them into what we have now. And this is the final product that I produced. So looking at it, you can see where the connections are between the boldness of the type that has been changed into something that's a little subtler, having all of the letters bolder but in lowercase. So it's still got that kind of punchline-y effect. And then having the triangles much more broken down, much more uniform, and just having them as this symbol makes for a much stronger and much cleaner identity, and it's much more recognizable. And then after presenting to not only the mentor of the Bridge to Business program, but also the CEO of Young Enterprise Scotland, he said something that really kind of pushed me through the imposter syndrome that I was suffering through, the depression that I'd been facing, giving me that confidence in my knowledge. And he said that he's only been shown a presentation like this once before, and that was when the creative studio that designed the original logo presented Bridge to Business's logo to him. And that made me feel phenomenal. That made me feel like this is what I was made to do. This is why I am on planet Earth. I am a designer. This is what I was born to do. And that installed me with a huge amount of confidence. And in the background, I didn't realise that a creative role was actually being made at the charity, and I was asked to apply to it. I applied, and then 45 minutes after the interview, I was offered the position. And over the next 16 months, I worked with Young Enterprise Scotland on a new skill of mine was animation, which was actually the first project that I worked on while I was there. And I worked on several animation projects whilst in the role of digital assistant, as well as doing document design, icon design, logo design, as well as working with the marketing team, doing some social media marketing as well as social media content. And that was incredibly valuable to me. And if you guys do want to check out any of the projects that I am mentioning, I will have a link down to my portfolio in the description, as well as the Building a Brand series by the Future. My contract with Young Enterprise Scotland did end on the 31st of December 2021. So coming into the new year, I was unemployed. And it's just one of those things when your contract ends. But I was feeling like I was on a huge upswing, because I just, created lots of incredible design, incredible content, not only for myself that was valuable, but for the company that I worked for, which I know was incredibly valuable for them, especially going through a time where everything is remote, everything's digital, everything needs to be ran digitally. So we need, that animation, we need those visual aspects to keep people engaged. And through that, somebody in their network reached out to Young Enterprise Scotland and said, "Hey, we're looking for a graphic designer for some projects. Do you know anyone?" and they sent them straight to me. And I was like, whoa, hang on, guys. I wasn't set up as a sole trader. I was not officially a freelance graphic designer. Give me a couple weeks. And 2 weeks later, on the 19th of January, I officially became a sole trader and officially became a freelance graphic designer. And I worked with this recruitment consultancy, not only to design some social media content for them, but also to design their official branding guidelines. And that was really interesting to actually work with them when they had so much content, so many assets, and to refine it into something that gave them purpose, gave them value, and that was something that they could take forward and that they currently use. With, I think, around about 14 or 15 different clients, mostly in the visual identity and branding guideline space, working on several different, very, very cool projects ranging from the recruitment consultancy that I worked with to a climate change charity, a marketing business, an airline as well. That was a weird one. And as well as I'm also running one-to-one sessions as well that can range anywhere from just a virtual coffee for, 20 minutes, half an hour to get to know and network with other incredible creatives that I really enjoy speaking to. From there to actually learning a bit more about design. Maybe it's freelance that you want to learn a bit about, or if you're looking for a deep dive into design. These are things that I now currently run because I've now gained a lot of the knowledge and experience, mostly by trial by fire, which I don't massively recommend, but it has been really fun. It has been really hard work, but it's also been incredibly rewarding. It's been an incredibly long journey, and it's been 11 years since I began that journey into the creative field, into design, and I honestly would not change any part of it. I feel like the path that I've been on has led me to this moment. I'm officially going to be a student at Glasgow School of Art, which is one of the best design schools in the world. I'm going to be starting there within the next 5 weeks, which is exciting, but also very terrifying. I'm incredibly nervous to be going back after, almost a decade of not being in further education. Ultimately, I do feel ready to go back. As nervous as I am, I do care a lot about going back and getting my degree. It's something that I've always really wanted to do during my time, and I feel ready now. Now that I've got the experience, now that I'm closing in on 2 years as a freelancer, and I've got so many incredible projects. I've got some really incredible clients that I'm working with at the moment. Things are really looking up. I mean, I've got one in place at the moment. I've got a cat as well. She's a nightmare, honestly. No, she's honestly great. But through all of that, it's been incredibly rewarding to look back on the things that I've done, the incredible people that I've met along my journey, and as well as you guys that are all here, all watching these videos, watching the things that I'm getting up to, the content that I'm producing. It's all incredibly valuable to me to know that you guys are getting something out of it as well. And that really means a lot to me. So thank you. It means worlds to me. It really does. With that, I will leave you all with this. I can't remember who said it, and I probably never will. But there is a phrase that I currently go by that I love, and it is, storytelling is the currency of human contact. And everyone's story is unique. It's what makes you, you. And that's my story. I'll catch you guys next time.